Welcome to the target stream for MintPress News. I'm your host, Robert Inlakesh. As always, thank you to everyone for joining us. We've got quite a bit lined up for today's show, including Hezbollah's use of drones to halt an Israeli attempted advance, as well as the retreat of a brigade from a base in southern Lebanon. A number of other developments have also taken place, including on the Iran and Gaza fronts too. But before we begin with that, this live stream and all the work we do at MintPress is supported by our members, and we call on you to join us for as little as $5 per month on Patreon. We were banned on PayPal and GoFundMe and had our fundraisers taken down and targeted by the Israel lobby and an Israeli OnlyFans model. So we need your support to keep MintPress alive so that we can continue to expose the stories that the corporate media refuses to touch. Just so everyone is aware, we are now doing these live streams every Monday and Thursday at 4 p.m. CST going forward. So that is twice per week. So with that being said, let's get into the main topics of today. Of course, we'll look at what's been going on in Lebanon. But first, of course, there is more in terms of developments on the Iran front. And this is a story that I wanted to bring everyone's attention to. Now, this is an Axios report that was just released yesterday by Barak Ravid, who is an Israeli journalist. And on some issues, he might have decent sources, but he also evidently serves an agenda. So looking at this is Axios' story. They said that there is a tense phone call between Trump and Netanyahu, and there is a divide between the two of them. And according to one source, Netanyahu's hair was on fire after the call. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring up this story in particular, because it's been doing the rounds and the Israeli media has been talking about it, the Western corporate media has been talking about it, is this is a trick that is frequently used prior to military action against Iran. This is a trick that they always use, and they've used it a number of times. The Trump administration, before both attacks on Iran, both the 12-day war and this current war, we saw all these stories coming out from outlets like the Jerusalem Post and even, more established US corporate media outlets. And of course, Axios, where they're providing you with this whole narrative of a fight between Donald Trump and Netanyahu. And the reason why we need to know that this is nonsense is because there's simply never any evidence that is presented. It's always like one source told me this. One source told me that this guy in the Israeli or US security establishment claims that Trump has hung up a phone call and was frustrated and raised his voice. And there's always this narrative which comes right before a US-Israeli attack against Iran, or they use it in terms of Gaza as well, that the United States is frustrated with the Israelis and they're going to implement a red line with the Israelis. And just to make sure everyone is aware of this, this is what they did during the Biden administration as well. Biden running out of patience. And this is, of course, like trying to smear Biden, because the New York Post is so incredibly pro-Israel that if you turn against Israel in any way, how dare you? But the New York Post says Biden's running out of patience with Netanyahu. Well, Israeli civilians are killed. Here's another story, and this is coming up here. This is quoting Bob Woodward's book, that Biden had called Netanyahu a bad effing guy, right? So this narrative that is being pushed is not just something that happens under the Trump administration. Again, they're going at it and claiming that somehow Trump is at loggerheads with Netanyahu now because he wants to sign some sort of peace agreement with the Iranians. But just so everyone is aware, they did the exact same thing throughout the Biden administration when it came to ceasefire, the ceasefire efforts, and red lines with blocking aid, and the red line with Israel invading Rafah in southern Gaza. They do this constantly. And the whole point of it is to throw you off. And it's a form of deception. This is psychological warfare. But the other element to this is to try and convince you that the US Trump administration or the US Biden administration is capable of making decisions like these by itself. And objectively, it's just not. The Biden administration, even when in 2024, there was a UN Security Council resolution that was passed because the US abstained in the Security Council, which ordered a 2-week temporary ceasefire during the month of Ramadan. What did Biden do? Immediately after they abstained, the Israelis threw a fit. They got so angry, so incredibly angry at the Biden administration, and they simply folded. The Biden administration came out and said, yeah, well, it's not really a binding resolution. Even when there's a UN Security Council resolution against the Israelis, the Biden administration didn't do anything. The Trump administration is even worse because, of course, his whole campaign was bankrolled by a who's who of Zionist billionaires, including Israel's richest billionaire, Miriam Adelson. And so Trump's ability to push back is zero. We saw in the Gaza Strip, for example, Trump allowed the Israelis not only to violate his ceasefire that he allegedly came in and imposed on them, but also block aid from entering the Gaza Strip for 3 months. Nothing. And then the solution was a privatized aid scheme where they used these psychotic contractors who came in and helped the Israelis lure starving civilians into these aid sites, or death traps, as they were called by Palestinians in Gaza, where they could mow them down. So I did want to bring that to everyone's attention and address that issue, because when it comes to these negotiations between the United States and the Iranians, this is a theme that comes up time and time again, where we hear claims of Trump is fighting with Netanyahu. And unless there is any real hard evidence, we should not believe that Trump is fighting with Netanyahu. And personally, I don't believe he even has the courage to fight with Netanyahu. I don't. And so these stories, like from Axios, are pure nonsense until proven otherwise. And I think that everyone should treat it as such, because there is nothing. Now, Trump, of course, he's been claiming a lot of victories lately. He's been claiming that they have full control, the United States, over the Strait of Hormuz. But it's sort of a bummer because, reality does set in sometimes. This is Reuters here. Iran is consolidating control over Hormuz with island checkpoints, diplomatic deals, and sometimes fees. And to my knowledge, I believe that those ships that have been passing, there's around 32 of them, I think, in the last 24 hours that have passed through the Strait of Hormuz. I think they're all paying a toll to Iran, or at least that is what's being reported. That's what I've heard. And so the Iranians are not letting up on their red lines, but Trump is speaking as if they're getting concessions and they are controlling with their blockade on a blockade, which is really blockading himself, because there's no way the Strait of Hormuz is going to fully open until Trump backs down. So I found this image before, and this is a good representation of what's currently going on. That being said, another developing story that's been reported on broadly has been, and I'm sure many viewers of this stream may have come into contact with some of the videos that have been shared around, is what's been going on with the Gaza aid flotilla and the activists, the hundreds of activists who were kidnapped in international waters, and these world leaders who have now summoned their envoys over not the kidnapping of the activists in international water itself or the abuse of the activists, but the video that Itamar Ben-Gvir, Israel's security minister, posted shaming those activists as they were being brutalized. And there's a few videos. I'll play the actual video that Itamar Ben-Gvir released on his social media just so everyone can see it. And then we'll discuss the implications of this, I guess.
ברוכים הבאים לישראל, אנחנו בעלי הבית. ככה צריך. עם ישראל חי. עם ישראל חי. כן.
זיכוי, כל המטרה כאן זה לראות שאין אנשים בתהליך.
לא להתרגש מהצעקות שלהם, לא להתרגש.
So that is the video that he posted on his own social media, which I believe is the entire reason why these Western countries are having a major problem with the treatment of the activists, because he just happened to post a video of it. And here's some footage that just emerged today as well of some of those activists that were deported after being kidnapped in international waters. And they don't look in very good shape, to say the least. Now, I want to just pull this up here again. This is the Haaretz story that was written on it. And I believe it's rather interesting. Obviously, what happened, and as you saw, the video that was released was atrocious. This is abhorrent behavior, especially by a minister, the security minister, nonetheless. But we know who Itamar Ben-Gvir is. And all these world leaders know who Itamar Ben-Gvir is. And my question is, this is where you draw your red line. This is where you are outraged. Western leaderships are outraged. This is where you are all going to summon your envoys because an Israeli high-ranking minister decided to film what they do. Israel has been committing a genocide in Gaza for over 2 years. Israel has flattened everything in Gaza. Israeli officials have openly made genocidal statements. The Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has an arrest warrant issued for him over committing war crimes. He is a war criminal, as per the International Criminal Court. There is an active case against Israel as a state for committing genocide. And the International Court of Justice made a ruling that it is a plausible genocide. This has been going on for months. We've seen, bare minimum, over 70,000 civilians killed in Gaza. We've seen Israel, over the past few years, attack more than 8 different countries. We've seen Israel brutalize, commit gang rape, have their country celebrate gang rape on Israeli television, in the Israeli Knesset, with Israeli comedians, against Palestinian prisoners. Itamar Ben-Gvir himself openly brags about passing a bill through the Knesset to execute Palestinian political prisoners. There are countless cases of rape and sexual abuse against Palestinian men, women, and children who are held hostage and are also encountered in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. And yet, the red line is drawn with the abuse of activists. And as horrific as it is, it's only because it was filmed, because those activists were beaten and battered. And before, there was a claim, I believe, by one of the activists in a previous flotilla that she was sexually abused. So now there is a focus on this. Now everyone's outraged. And even other Israeli officials are saying, to Itamar Ben-Gvir, including Gideon Sa'ar and Netanyahu, that you've tarnished the image of Israel. Tarnished the image of Israel that is currently ethnically cleansing southern Lebanon, that has bombed churches, that is forcing its illegal settlers into the West Bank, into the Syrian Golan Heights, that is currently occupying and stealing more Syrian territory on a daily basis, is bombing Syria, is bombing Lebanon with white phosphorus, has used chemical munitions against chemical warfare against both Lebanese territory and Syrian territory, that frequently kidnaps, and even in this case, kidnapped international activists attempting to bring aid to a suffering civilian population under siege, under an illegal siege. All of this, and I could go on for days and days and days. And this is just recent stuff that they've done. And this is where you draw your red line. This is where, oh no, this cannot be tolerated. Because you know why? Because they don't like it being filmed. They don't like having no way to deny it anymore. They like to have a little bit of wiggle room to lie about it. Every time they do something atrocious like this, they want a little bit of wiggle room. And Itamar Ben-Gvir was just like, no, this is who we are. Welcome to Israel. That was what he entitled that video that he posted. Welcome to Israel. Because that's what they feel. That's what they think. That is Israel. It didn't tarnish the image of Israel. But again, they just like these little loopholes where they're like, oh yeah, but that was a video filmed by a Palestinian. That was a video filmed by an activist. How do you know that when Shireen Abu Akleh was shot, that it wasn't actually a Palestinian? It probably was. Maybe. Oh no, maybe not. Oh yeah. Oh, we attacked the funeral of that journalist. This is before the genocide in Gaza, when they executed the Al Jazeera veteran journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. They attacked her funeral. And she's a Palestinian Christian, by the way. They attacked her funeral. And again, they tried to manipulate footage. The Israeli police would manipulate footage. And basically no reaction. Itamar Ben-Gvir, by the way, just before this stunt was pulled, went into Al-Aqsa Mosque and openly paraded around with the Israeli flag. And that day said that Israel has sovereignty over Al-Aqsa Mosque. Right? This is something, by the way, that the Jordanians have this custodianship of Al-Aqsa. Where was Jordan in any of this? Where is Saudi Arabia? Where is Al-Azhar? Where are all the Muslim and Arab countries and institutions to condemn it even? Not in just Western leaderships, because it's damaging the status quo. When Ariel Sharon did the same thing without an Israeli flag, entered Al-Aqsa, it triggered the Second Intifada in the year 2000. That was one of the main triggers for the Second Intifada. Itamar Ben-Gvir paraded around in Al-Aqsa Mosque with the Israeli flag, and there was no reaction. And then he does this a few days later. But he has parties thrown with him with nooses on a cake. He visits Palestinian prisoners, political prisoners, inside of the jails and humiliates them. On camera. He frequently does this. This is who he is. He's a settler. He's from a settlement, an illegal West Bank settlement. And the finance minister is too. And beforehand, the previous head of the Israeli military was also a settler. But again, they draw their red line here with this. And again, this is horrible. The videos are atrocious, and it's very clear that the Israelis don't care anymore. They're just treating everyone like this, right? Everyone, they know that the world is opposed to them because what they've done. So they're treating everyone like this anymore. They're not even putting up a front for Western, that we're not going to treat Western people like this. No, they're going to beat Western activists. They're going to try and humiliate them. They're going to subject them to sexual harassment and the likes. They're going to do that. But that being said, moving on to the main topic that we're going to be covering today, and that is the Lebanon front, where the Israelis, despite the ceasefire being extended, apparently, allegedly extended, for another 45 days, I think they said. I mean, at this point, it's just irrelevant because there is no ceasefire. It's only just a magical, it's a thing for the Lebanese government, which is a US puppet government, to claim that it's done, and it doesn't mean anything, other than they're not bombing Beirut as much, I guess. Maybe they don't kill 300 people in 10 minutes like they did a few weeks back. That being said, the Israelis are advancing in southern Lebanon, and they have been battered by Hezbollah's use of its FPV drones. And this is very interesting. This is the national news. This is an Emirati news outlet, by the way. And they report Hezbollah's drones slow Israeli advances, as colonel injured in South Lebanon bombing. So what has happened here is that Hezbollah has managed, using its FPV drones, by the way, because there was a question about how well they could be utilized, these drones that have been used to strike countless Israeli targets around the clock, how well they could be utilized on the battlefield to prevent the Israeli military from advancing. And of course, it's not just that they're using the FPV drones. They're also engaging in direct clashes with the Israeli military, but they've managed to hold them off. And this is a map of the town that Israel is trying to capture. This is the English translation here that was released by Hezbollah. So Hadatha, which the Israelis attempted to enter and capture a number of times, turned into a death trap, because not only were they subjected to the FPV drones, which are becoming a major problem for the Israelis, they were also struck with guided anti-tank munitions, and Hezbollah fighters emerged and engaged in direct zero-distance clashes with them as well, according to the reports. And this is a graphic that was released by Hezbollah, which shows the different areas of confrontation there. And just as a point of reference here, just going to take this one down, pull this up here. So the Israelis, this is Hadatha right here, where the Israelis are advancing to. The Israelis, in their original map that they set out and they claimed was their yellow line and their security zone in South Lebanon, had included areas like Beit Relief and others right here, but it didn't go as far up in that map that was released as Hadatha. So the Israelis are advancing beyond what they said they would in southern Lebanon, which means they're actively going after exactly what we know they want to, and what's been demonstrated time and time again here. And that is that they want to go all the way up here to the Litani River, and they want to claim all of South Lebanon. That's what they want. I just clicked on that. So the whole territory here from the border, they want up to this zone here along the Litani River. This is where they want. They want to capture all of South Lebanon. And up until the year 2000, since the 1980s, Israel did occupy South Lebanon. And the government, like today, didn't do anything for them. There was the South Lebanon Army, which was the proxy, which sort of operates a little bit like the Palestinian Authority, to be honest, at this point, which helped the Israelis keep that occupation of South Lebanon. And Hezbollah is the reason that they withdrew. And so, having said that, it's time to get onto the first videos that have been released here. This is, just pull this up. So just before we get into this video, it was released of a number of different operations that Hezbollah carried out using their FPV drones, including the last one, which was when the 226th paratroopers brigades, when they departed from South Lebanon, when they ran away, they ended up hitting an Israeli flag that was raised on a flagpole, and taking down the Israeli flag with an FPV drone as well. So watch this here. So this shows a number of different operations where the FPV drones are coming in and targeting them, and showing how, and this is Baida. Baida is obviously in South Lebanon, and the Israelis came in and occupied the area and set up a military base. And Hezbollah, using its drones, you can see this is surveillance drones here, using the drones, they managed to take out so many Israeli military assets here that they simply retreated. So they forced the Israeli military, they forced them to retreat. That's the first there on a Israeli Jeep. Here's on a soldier gathering that they targeted with an FPV drone. Another clip here emerging. And this shows this is drone detecting equipment and operating equipment that they targeted there with that attack. And again, they're able to locate because they do reconnaissance with their drones. That there is an anti-personnel munition that was dropped on Israeli troops. And this is all in the same area. So these videos were all released independently by Hezbollah. That's another attack on Israeli soldiers there. And there were casualties admitted by the Israeli side from that. And so what they're showing here is what they've done with these swarms of drones, which they've used to surveil the Israeli positions and then hit multiple targets. They've forced them back. They had to run away. So the Israeli military literally withdrew from an area that they had used as a base. And here is the final drone operation, which is carried out. The Israeli flag, you can see, is still hanging there. And the operator of the drone takes out the Israeli flag, hits the flagpole, and the Israeli flag falls on the ground. So they took down the Israeli flag with a drone as well. And there it's highlighted in red that the Israeli flag has indeed fell down. And so that they defeated them. They forced them back from this position. And it was so costly that they had to run away. And so this obviously AI here. And then it's in Hebrew and Arabic that they've been kicked out. So that was one of the videos that was released in the past few days since we've been here on the live stream, where on Monday there was an enormous amount of videos to get through. There has been a large amount of videos, primarily of FPV drones hitting their targets here. And another development has happened since as well, which has been quite bad for the Israelis, and they've been crying about it. And that is, let's pull this up here. This is the Times of Israel, that Hezbollah used a drone in an assassination strike against the Israeli military's 101st Brigade commander in South Lebanon. And so he was injured so badly, they said he suffered a brain injury, and they had to put him in a medically induced coma and operate on him immediately. That's him right here. And so another thing that's been pointed out, and I don't know whether this is confirmed or not, but this Israeli commander has been linked to the killing of Hind Rajab. So here he is, Colonel Meir Biderman. And he's also the highest ranking Israeli commander to have been killed since the warfare between Lebanon and Israel has commenced back on October 8, 2023. So it's a serious issue for the Israelis. The Israelis are having a cry about it right now. I don't know if this is confirmed, however, because there is a dispute over whether or not he was the one responsible for this. I know there are some of my sources who are saying that it's not conclusively proven. However, if that is the case, then Hezbollah has just exacted revenge for the brutal murder of Hind Rajab in Gaza, who was killed with hundreds of bullets fired into her car. And obviously a very harrowing story from the Gaza genocide that occurred. And so regardless, this was also an Israeli commander who was serving in Gaza. So even if it wasn't Hind Rajab, there are many other little girls who were murdered in Gaza under the watch of this commander. And so Hezbollah are fighting many of the same brigades that were involved in Gaza and committing the Gaza genocide. That's what they are doing right now on the ground. And so they are now successfully carrying out what are assassination attacks against senior Israeli commanders on the ground. And they're successfully pulling this off. And that being said, I want to show also another clip that has emerged from Hezbollah the past few days. Just as a disclaimer, again, I make this disclaimer in every single one of these streams. This is not an endorsement. This is, of course, of the videos that you're seeing. This is for the viewers' own personal information. So we're going to get in now to what happened to Israel's Iron Dome platforms. So Hezbollah has taken out at least 3 Iron Dome batteries. I believe there was a report that they targeted 3 in a single day. But this is the second video they've released of hitting a battery, an Iron Dome battery directly. This is also a big deal for the Israelis because, as you can see, those Iron Dome batteries, this drone is not being picked up. They have no idea that this drone is heading towards the Iron Dome battery. There it is. And they hit it directly. This is a direct hit on the Iron Dome battery with the FPV drone. And there you go. Goodbye, Iron Dome battery. So their air defenses are not able to detect and not able to defend. And if they continue being taken out with these FPV drones, then it's going to get very, very difficult for the Israelis to defend against rocket attacks. So the FPV drones are actually, by striking Israel's Iron Dome batteries and taking them out, and I presume Hezbollah will continue to run these operations and take out more Iron Dome batteries. If they continue doing this and they knock out enough of them, then Israel will have a very tough time combating Hezbollah rocket fire over the border, the Lebanese border, and hitting the northern Israeli settlements. There's already a lot of complaints coming from the northern Israeli settlements because they are seeing the impacts of these FPV drones. And today, Israeli Channel 12 actually came out with a statement and said that the Israeli soldiers that are stationed in northern occupied Palestine, those Israeli settlement areas along the Lebanese border, are like ducks on a firing range. And they're openly saying this now because it's gotten so bad for them. And so just to give an idea to everyone of what's happening here, the Israelis have been forced to make these makeshift attempts to try and combat the drones and come up. And, the Israeli ingenuity here is at play, where they're using fishing nets, literally fishing nets in a lot of cases. Now, the Israeli military claims that it is providing the netting, but there are conflicting stories and claims about this, because the Israeli soldiers themselves started reporting to local Israeli media that they're going and grabbing fishing nets. They're grabbing nets, any netting that they can get from local settlements, so that they can place these nettings above their military vehicles and positions, hoping that the FPV drones will get caught in the nets and won't be able to strike them. But as you are going to see here, that's not exactly working too well for them. So this is an Israeli military vehicle. Again, you're going to see in this video, I believe they have the netting up, and they're putting this netting over, to protect them. But, if you look at it in the way that it's done, I think they just don't understand that this doesn't really affect the drones. And this camouflage as well, they're trying to camouflage their positions, and there's multiple videos of them camouflaging vehicles. And you see right here, it's approaching, takes its time, and then it hits the vehicle. And so this is, their efforts, are being made obsolete, and the drone operators are becoming more sophisticated. They're taking their times, picking their targets, and we're seeing that. They're being very patient with what they're hitting. Here's another clip which was published. Go forward here. This is a separate video that was published today. Actually, this was released. And again, you see the FPV drone approaching until it begins to reach its target here. It's located the target and heads straight for it. And again, if you watch here, they're trying to cover their positions here, hoping that they can catch the drones as they're coming in, and they're failing abysmally at this, at least with in the videos that we're seeing. And those kinds of vehicles that they're using, opposed to the tanks, when it's armored Jeeps or Hummers, and even their armored personnel carriers are not as protected as the tanks are. The vehicle is totaled when these drones hit them. And we've seen quite a bit of evidence of this as well. Sometimes with the tanks, especially with the FPV drones that use the fiber optic cables, they don't carry as big a explosive charge. And so what happens is, often, even if they go for the weak point of the armor, it won't create a tank kill hit. But there are cases where we've seen that demonstrated that it does. There is another kind of the FPV drone, which is radio operated, that they appear to be using bigger munitions. And so when they hit tanks, they are achieving tank kill hits, and they are being used as well. But the fiber optic cable drones are being used more frequently because they can't be jammed. So you can't use you can't use jamming capabilities. Israeli air defenses often can't detect them. You have to listen out for them and watch the skies. So you have to have people watching and spotting. And the Israelis don't like to fight like that, because as we've seen in Gaza, and they're implementing the exact same strategy here, and the Israelis are now complaining about this in their media, that all they're doing in South Lebanon is destroying buildings. They're not achieving anything against Hezbollah. And because Hezbollah is more sophisticated militarily than Hamas was and the other Palestinian groups were, they can't get away with the strategy that they're implementing. So the strategy, the Gaza strategy, is go in there, destroy the buildings, and quite literally, film yourself riding around on a little boy's bike with training wheels on it, throw over someone's TV stand, pull women's underwear and lingerie out of their drawers and wear it and dance around in it on camera and post this to humiliate the civilian population. They've tried some of that in Lebanon. They did go through a woman's underwear drawer and pull out undergarments and sniff them on camera and put them on other soldiers and laugh and run around. This is their behavior. But what I'm saying here is that in Gaza, maybe you'll get away with that more. But in Lebanon, you're dealing with a much more formidable force, military force, which will be hunting you with these FPV drones while you try and do this. And so it's not a very good idea to just go in there and try and destroy buildings and try and have fun with people's personal items like they're doing, and then just believe that you're going to be okay because Hezbollah will hunt you down. And that's what we're seeing when they have to fight a more sophisticated, and this is not an army, this is a armed group that are using asymmetric warfare tactics. This is guerrilla warfare. This is not another army. This is not if the Israelis had to fight head on the Iranians head on. That's a different question. And we've never see them have to do this in the past decades. They've always been fighting armed groups. And even when in 1973, there's a little bit of a tangent here, when Syria and Egypt decided to attack to claim back the occupied Sinai Peninsula and the Golan Heights, initially they reclaimed their territory until the United States came in and helped them. And also the Egyptians sort of betrayed the Syrians and halted their advance. And because they did this, it put the Syrians at a disadvantage. And then, history played out how it did. Even Saddam Hussein had to send his forces into Syria to aid the Syrians. But at that time, we're talking about as well an Arab world that was more united than it is today. But, when they fight standing armies, they don't do too well against them. And they operate on a doctrine of fighting short wars, short, intense wars where they can anticipate everything. The Israeli military is terrible at responding and reacting. They react emotionally, not rationally. And that's what we've seen since October 7 is very emotional reactions. And so here's more footage that was released recently by Hezbollah. Again, another FPV drone operation here. See the drone again circling. Something that is of note with these videos is that I don't always play the full here. Here the vehicle is hidden again, and they're doing this. They're camouflaging or trying to camouflage the vehicles. They're trying to hide them within the terrain. In some cases, they're actually putting camouflage over the top of these vehicles, and it's failing abysmally because Hezbollah are using these drones and monitoring the Israeli positions before they attack. Or they might know where the Israelis have set up, but they don't know precisely yet where their targets are. And so they'll be on the watch. And sometimes they do have more precise intelligence. They have spotters. So Hezbollah has used spotters. And this is something, again, I'll pull up the map just to support this point here. So if we're looking at South Lebanon, load this here. If we're looking at South Lebanon where they're operating, the Israelis have told us repeatedly that they're occupying this whole, southern portion of South Lebanon below the Litani River. And they tell us that they've controlled this territory. This is their yellow line. And they occupy this territory, essentially. And they have, full operational control. That is not true. They don't have full operational control in these areas because Hezbollah are there with them. They're watching them. And then they're using asymmetric warfare tactics to take them out. So Hezbollah will have spotters inside a town or a village that the Israelis have entered, and they're just there to watch them. And feed information back. So to drone operators, or as well, there are Hezbollah fighters that fire rockets at their positions, right? So if they see there's a fixed position, the Israelis have established sort of a base there, then they can hit them with rockets. They can move their anti-tank guided missiles in to strike them with precision. They can fire artillery at them. They even have heavy artillery that they got from Syria, which they published some footage of. And today it seems like they've released footage of a new kind of drone that they're using in Lebanon. So they have a range of different drones. In this period, since the so-called ceasefire in South Lebanon, or in all of Lebanon, sorry, and not in South Lebanon, the Hezbollah has not been using its ballistic missiles and its cruise missiles against the Israelis. So that whole arsenal that's not even being tapped into. And this is Hezbollah fighting at, this is not full capacity for them. But they are dealing massive blows to the Israelis, again, including this commander here, who was taken into hospital and placed in a medically induced coma so that they could do brain surgery on him because he was struck directly with a drone. And there are reports that he was implicated in the murder of Hind Rajab in the Gaza Strip. But I'm going to wait for confirmation before I say that with confidence. But for sure, he operated inside the Gaza Strip. So the Israelis, they're not having the best time with it. And they're also getting struck by other kinds of operations. Here, this is a helicopter logistical hub. This is the logistical equipment here. And again, the Lebanese fighters have located this, and they're hitting it knowing exactly what they're going after here. And so they're choosing their targets very wisely. We're seeing them taking out the logistical equipment of the Israelis. We're seeing them taking out and choosing their targets very carefully, taking out command vehicles. In this case, this is for helicopters, and I presume medevac helicopters that are being used to evacuate dead and wounded Israeli soldiers from South Lebanon. And the bodies are piling up even during this ceasefire period. And as we covered in the past live stream that we did on Monday, some of these operations that Hezbollah are showing, Israel didn't admit the casualties in those operations. So the Israelis are still trying to cover up, but the problem is that these drones are showing everything now. So we don't always get another drone monitoring what the first drone hit in all cases, but we have got footage of that. So we do know for sure, and we've also had spotters filming too, in some instances, confirming the total destruction of tanks. But even when they don't destroy a target completely, for instance, a Merkava tank, if you just take off the tracks of the tank, if you damage it badly enough so that it cannot move, then you've taken it off the battlefield and it has to undergo repairs. And maybe you injured some soldiers in the process in doing this. So these operations, these are with drones that, in the case of the fiber optic cable drones, these FPV drones, cost Hezbollah, the consensus estimate is $300, but other estimates have said that they are capable of producing them for as low as $50 per unit. And they've obviously built them in bulk. So these FPV drones are now being used to deadly effect against tanks that are worth millions of dollars. I think the cheapest Merkava tanks are worth like 3.5 million. And then as well, you had to factor into this is the Israelis have been fighting in Gaza for 2 years, and they have sustained a lot of hits on their tanks in Gaza too. So that also has to be factored in. And they were trying to reserve some of their tanks in their tank arsenal for Lebanon when they were fighting in Gaza. They had to withdraw some of them, and you saw them use more of these Jeeps and these older armored personnel carriers as well. Some that were deemed too dangerous to use, they were bringing them back. And now in Lebanon, they're in a very bad situation, because when they withdraw from these positions, like we showed before, that a brigade withdrew from a military position in Beida in South Lebanon, when they withdraw, Hezbollah follows them back. So they are still operating in South Lebanon, and it just means that Hezbollah are going to have more targets to hit on the other side of the border. And they can't stop this. It just keeps happening and happening and happening, to the point now where there is an enormous amount of criticism coming from the Israeli media internally every single day criticizing the failure of the government and the military to not only combat the drone threat, which Israeli think tanks were writing about 2+ years ago, but also to have any sort of plan or strategy in South Lebanon. And now they're admitting it. It's turned into the war that Israel desperately wants to avoid at all costs. So it's turned into the war of attrition. And this is something Israel has avoided for its entire existence. And it has made sure that it never gets involved and bogged down in these kinds of wars. Now it's involved in it. One of the reasons why the Israelis withdrew initially from South Lebanon in the year 2000 was because of the fact that they didn't want to get bogged down and suffer the consequences over the long term of Hezbollah, especially as it developed its military capabilities even more and more. So the Israelis, having this doctrine since the establishment of their entity, they've always sought to limit the time and duration of fighting. Again, this circles back to the point which frequently is made in this stream, and I think you'll be familiar with it now, and the Israelis are obsessed with, that is the spider's web theory. And now, it's not a spider's web, but it's fishing nets that they're using to try and protect them. But it's a sort of a good metaphor for their society. They have this sort of strong exterior that they put on for you. They try to present themselves as being so powerful and brutal. That's why Itamar Ben-Gvir, who we were discussing at the start of the stream, he likes to brag and he likes to come out in public and puff his chest out and show you how powerful we, the Israelis, are. But the reality is they can't take any punishment. And their society, and this does link back again to Itamar Ben-Gvir, their society is all implicated in the genocide, all of them. And the reason why is because the entire society and culture is built, and this is something that's been written about in a lot of depth. And their society is built around the concept of the army, and their state is built around the concept of the army, and it is a citizens' army. So the indoctrination in the schooling system, again, it's army indoctrination they go through. They are conscript. It's a conscript army. They all go to the army, or they go overseas. They get some kind of exemption, but most of them go to the army. And so and even if you're not in the army and you grow up there and you go to school and you get that education, your mindset is that army mindset and way of thinking. And so they have this idea that they are the most powerful and the strongest, but also the most moral army as well. And they believe this because it's the whole myth, the Israeli myth. The land was promised to us 3,000 years ago. We're actually from the Middle East, despite the fact that we can't go out in the sun for too long, but we'll ignore that. We're the most moral army in the world, and we have all of the justification to do anything we want to anyone. And, blah, 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 if anyone says anything else. And so what happens is then suddenly when this idea of the most powerful army is challenged, they start to lose it. They lose their minds. And they can't accept, the Israeli media can't accept it. The military itself, it has a serious manpower issue now. They're at a deficit, they admit, of at least 8,000 soldiers to fight this war against Lebanon. And they're talking already about opening up the Gaza front again. Netanyahu today said that the Gaza issue is almost solved. So they're talking about implementing more schemes. But when things get tough, the Israeli society can't cop it. When the soldiers start dying, the Israeli society can't cop it. And the problem that they have here, and this is where the spider's web theory works, and it is true, the Israelis have always had this idea of total dominance and that they never have to suffer the consequences of their actions because they've been able to fight these short wars. They've never fought wars of attrition. It's always been targeted assassinations. It's always been planting a bomb inside someone's car and blowing them up, blowing up an embassy somewhere, blowing up the pagers, indiscriminate pager attacks. It's always been going in and being an occupation force and brutalizing children and innocent civilians. And it's been counterinsurgency. Or the wars that they fight are short, extremely short, well planned down to a T. They don't last more than a few weeks, and that's it. So you might get some rocket attacks, but the rockets aren't actually that bad. They don't hit as hard as what if your missiles hit buildings. When the opposition fire back, they don't have the firepower you have and the technology you have. So they have been conditioned like this. You can just get away. Your problems can be solved by killing whoever is in front of you, and you're just the good guys perpetually. And then the losses that they sustain, for instance, let's say a rocket comes in, hits a house and kills a few people from an Israeli family. Well, that's because they're terrorists. And then that further justifies, because the price is relatively small compared to what the other side pays, they justify it in their mind. This is the terrorism we're fighting against. And see, this justifies why we're attacking them in the first place. So they think like this. But suddenly when your army is bogged down, when your soldiers are having to look over their shoulders and into the skies at all hours of the day because an FPV drone could buzz down and hit them in the forehead, or could smash their tank, or there could be an IED planted in any road that they're driving down, or the rocket fire could continue frequently and then it's never going to stop, and there's no plan to stop the rocket fire on areas like Kiryat Shimona or Shlomi or these areas, like they don't have plans to stop. When then you realize that there is a prolonged consequence to your actions, you don't want to face it. You want a short answer, and you want some kind of equation that can be established where you exact a massive price on the enemy and they can't do anything back. And Hezbollah have flipped that. This is why there was a 17-year period where Hezbollah deterred Israel. Israel fundamentally changed the leadership I'm talking about now after October 7 and its way of thinking. But the reason why they didn't do this in the first place and fight against Hezbollah was because they knew that this would be the result, a war of attrition. And Hezbollah are going to win that war. And I believe that everything indicates that. Look, you need to look at it this way if you want to try and understand it and what's happening on the ground. You have an indigenous population in South Lebanon who have been driven out of their homes, had their homes destroyed, and who have lived under Israeli occupation. Really, that dates back to the 1980s. They have experienced civilian massacres. They've experienced attacks on their mosques, on their churches, on their hospitals, on their schools, etc. Journalists assassinated, emergency workers assassinated, everyone. And their resistance, which the people are the backbone of, because this is what happens. There wouldn't be, when you have national liberation movements, or you have armed resistance, which operates in any climate around the world, it cannot exist without the support of the local population. And of course, when you live under occupation, a brutal occupation, and you lose family members to this occupation, and they behave in the way that they do, that breeds more and more support for the group. And so in the case of Hezbollah, Israel took its best shot at them. They pulled off things that nobody believed was possible against Hezbollah. They pulled off these pager attacks, these terrorist pager attacks, that even Leon Panetta, the former director of the CIA, called as such. And then they assassinated not just the full senior leadership of Hezbollah and the military leadership and the heads of the Radwan force, the elite units of Hezbollah, the special forces, but they also assassinated Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, who in many ways was, there are a lot of leaders, and taking out leaders doesn't always greatly affect groups like this. And they're built to endure such losses. These groups don't operate on one personality. But Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the former Secretary General of Hezbollah, was extremely influential and a massive loss to the organization. And there is no doubt about that. Israel pulled off the biggest blows it possibly could against them. And they're still getting battered in southern Lebanon. They've still got no answers. They still don't know how to defeat them. And they still don't have that desire as well from their population to suffer the consequences it would take to try to defeat them. So Israel's implementing the Gaza strategy. Blow up civilian homes. Blow up civilian homes. Go in and destroy villages, erase villages, and try and ethnically cleanse the local population without actually having to fight. Because again, in Gaza, they didn't fight. They didn't go on the ground and confront them face to face. And, if you were trying to destroy a group like Hamas, for instance, you would think that the Israeli military would be going into tunnels, that it would be fighting underground, that it would be trying to locate all of the Hamas hideouts. And they didn't. What they did is they went to the Shifa hospital. That was their first operation. When they entered Gaza City at the start of the genocide, the first major operation was to go into the Shifa hospital. Shifa was, of course, not a military command node and all of these things that they claimed it was. And they entered anyway, and they made up all their nonsense, and they put a bunch of Kalashnikovs down. And I think it was Shifa or in another hospital where they said that they found banners belonging to the militants, and they actually had Kitab Khayam Janine or something on one of the banners, which is like the Jenin battalion, right? Which is Jenin is in the West Bank, right? So they've just obviously bought some headbands, random headbands, not reading Arabic or knowing what it's saying, planted them and been like, yeah, that's good enough. Here's a Kalashnikov and here's like something in Arabic, and yeah, hey. But the whole point here is that they don't actually fight on the ground. They don't actually go after Hamas or Hezbollah or go into tunnels and stuff like this. They're just there targeting the civilian population, and targeting the civilian population does not work. All it does is creates more support for the resistance. This doesn't matter where it is in the world. It's going to be the same exact thing, because the collective punishment policy, especially with the people that you're dealing with in South Lebanon and in the Gaza Strip, collective punishment doesn't work. One thing that works is something that a lot of people don't focus on. The strategy that they used in the West Bank works. Why do I say that the strategy they used in the West Bank? Not all of the strategy. There's a few different things that they used. But what they did in the West Bank is they allowed a few different things to happen. They put the Palestinian Authority in control there. So the Palestinian Authority has its security forces, which manage this sort of domestic situation in the major cities, which are the most populated in the West Bank. So Palestinians are policing other Palestinians. And then you give them access to some goodies here and there. And you allow them to have, take out loans that, will never be paid off. You can allow them to take out unlimited loans. Allow them to transport in some vehicles from neighboring Jordan, because, they'll use these loans and these credit cards that they get, which they can't pay off, to buy these vehicles, right? So then they're engaged. They have to work, right? And you've got them involved in this whole social life and stuff like this, and trying to, clang on to, I can get a nice car and all of this. And they're in the rat race. If you do that while you continue to take a lot of their homes and burn down villages with your settlers, and you isolate different parts of the territory from one another, and you use this Palestinian police force to crack down on anyone who's doing independent activism or are wanting to wage armed struggle, and you work alongside them to do that, that works. Because in the West Bank, for example, there hasn't been a third intifada. And the reason why there's no intifada in the West Bank is because of these strategies. A large percentage of the West Bank's population are working for the Palestinian Authority. So they're not going to do anything against Israel, because doing something against Israel and the Palestinian Authority you'll lose your job, or you could go to jail, right? So the Palestinian Authority protects the Israeli settlers, and it protects the Israelis. and works with them in security coordination. So, you can't do anything if you work for the Palestinian Authority. And another big chunk of the employment in the West Bank is the Israeli settlements and settlers themselves who employ them, right? That is how you stop something like this, and you slowly take over territory. Now they're accelerating it. So the equation in the West Bank may change. You may see something different happen. But those sort of strategies, and there's a lot of layers to it. There are the Western NGOs. There are the soft power of the United States and the European Union that is in the West Bank with their NGOs, which go into communities which are facing Israeli settler expansionism or next to the wall or whatever it will be. And these NGOs pick out certain individuals, the most vocal and talented individuals who are the most motivated to lead inside the community, and they'll give them money and want to do employment with them, right? They want to pick out the best and the brightest in these communities, and then they pit them against each other. This stuff works. Killing people's children and providing them no other option means that they will definitely pick up a weapon and fight you. That's what it means. And the Israelis have experienced this. And that's what they're going through right now, is they're realizing that's not how it works. But it's too late, because you already committed a genocide in Gaza. You already slaughtered thousands and thousands of civilians inside of Lebanon and did what you did there. So it's too late. You occupied South Lebanon after 1982. You were bombing Lebanon and attacking Lebanon in the 70s and before. And so it doesn't work. The only way out of this for the Israelis would be to surrender or to sign a genuine peace agreement regionally. But they won't do it. They had an opportunity with Oslo, but they threw away Oslo, which is probably a different episode to cover, a little bit of history to get into there. But the strategy that they're implementing now in South Lebanon is a failing strategy. And I believe that all these videos coming out and the Israeli media coverage indicates that, yes, they are not doing a very good job. And they are not hiding their losses like they did before, because there's footage of all of their losses. And we're seeing a lot of proof now come out. So with that being said, that is this Thursday's live stream. If you did like this, you got this far into the video, please hit that like button, share it around as well. Add a comment in the comment section. That helps us with the algorithm. And make sure that you tune in on Monday and Thursdays going forward. So we're doing 2 live streams per week here from MintPress. Thank you to everyone for your support. Thanks for listening. We will continue to cover the latest breaking news out of the region and beyond in these live streams. So for tonight, thank you to everyone. And please do catch us again here, same place, same time on Monday.